Well, today is Fornona Sunday, and it is an exciting day for us. It's a day when we talk about what God has been doing in the life of our church, and we look forward together about what God might be doing in the future. And let me just be real. It is amazing what can happen in a year. Can anybody agree with that? It is amazing what can happen in a year. A year ago, I didn't have a beard. A year ago, I didn't have a tumor surgery a year ago. I wasn't graduating with a doctorate. I'm going to be doing that in 10 days. A year ago, yeah, it's pretty cool stuff, right? A year ago, Stacy and I were kind of figuring out where to put our kids into school. We feel like we've got that figured out. And it's amazing how much can happen over the course of a year. It's amazing how much can change over the course of a year. It was just over a year that we kicked off a series titled Home. Real quick, anybody in the room, who was here for this series, Home? Home was a series that we launched in the beginning of the fall of 2017. And it was really birthed around these verses that Jeremiah writes to a group of people that are living in a new city. And we were talking about the realities of transition, that for most of us, we didn't grow up here in Lake Nona. Something brought us here to the city, whether it was work or a new opportunity or school or a relationship. And we spent a couple of weeks in these verses. Jeremiah 29, 5 and 6 says, build homes and plan to stay. Plant gardens and eat the food that they produce. Then find spouses for them so that you may have many grandchildren. Multiply, don't dwindle away. And then verse 7 was massive for us. It said, and work for the peace and prosperity of the city where I sent you. Pray to the Lord for it, for its welfare will determine your welfare. And we began asking this question as a church. What would it mean if our church was for Nona? What would it mean if we weren't just a place that was just for us, but we lived out a vision and a picture of what it means to be a people and a community? That because we're there, the community is better off because of our presence. And that began this vision and this heart for what we call the Fornona Initiative. And over that time, and really over the course of this year, I've still been praying this prayer found in Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 2. Lord, I've heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds, Lord. Renew them in our day, in our time, make them known. And over the course of the fall of 2017, just a year ago, we began to pray and believe God for what might be in the future for us as a church. How we could be a church that would not just be for us, but be for Nona. And we really believe that that was built out of a vision of saying we want to plant roots in this community. We want to be a lighthouse and a beacon. We want to be a church that multiplies and launches new churches throughout the Lake Nona area, making a difference and helping people know and take their next best step following Jesus. We were asking this question, what if? What if? What if what God has for us is so much more? And then you showed up in a powerful way. And in just over a course of about 2 or so months, through prayer and through time together, through vision nights, you committed over $1 million to this vision of expanding our reach into our community, not for us, but for the sake of the people that are not here yet. And let me tell you, the year has been incredible. In fact, this is a question I've been asking myself a lot over the last couple of months. What if we're living in the days we'll be telling the next generation about? Like, what if right now, what we're experiencing as a church, what if right now, what we're experiencing in community groups and what's happening in Kin City and all of these miraculous things that have been happening over the course of the year, what if these are the stories that I'll be telling my grandkids when I'm old and gray and bald in about 2 years? What in the world will we be telling them? You know, I had this moment with my daughter this week in preparing for these messages where I was listening back to the messages that we had given in leading up to the Fornona Initiative. And my daughter's in the back. I'm driving them to school. And as I'm pulling up to drop them off to school, I hit pause because I want to get them out of the car. And as we're getting out of the car, Emma looks at me and she says, Dad, all of those things that you talked about a year ago, they've happened. And I thought in that moment, my daughter is getting a firsthand, front seat to the miracle of the local church, of the generosity of people who are going above and beyond, thinking not so much about ourselves, but about the people that need to know of the life-changing message of Jesus. And so today what we want to do is look back at what happened in 2018 and spend some time looking forward to what we see God calling us to next. So we'll look at this question first. What happened in 2018? And while we do that, why don't you turn your eyes to the screen?
Lake Nona is thriving. What once was an idea, a vision, a dream, is now a reality. Buildings have become communities, houses have become homes, people have become friends and family. Those same people who have made Lake Nona home are being invited to experience a love that is only found in Jesus. God is revealing his goodness and faithfulness every day, and our work of inviting others into relationship with him has just begun. There's a wide open future in Lake Nona, and we are grateful and excited to be a part of it. In the last year, we've been blessed to see our weekend gatherings grow at a rate of 45%. We've added a third service in a different location, extending our reach to a specific community and meeting a felt need. We've tripled the amount of community groups from the previous year, with still more to come. Our leadership capacity has increased by focusing on developing leaders and followers of Christ that will not only serve the local church, but the global church as well. We're planting roots in the ground, anticipating the building of a permanent facility that will be a hub to our church community and the community of Lake Nona. As we've seen many people begin the process of connecting with God, we're left with questions like, what's next? The emphasis and center of everything we do lies in our next step. We support missionaries, invest in the next generation, build relationships, launch services, and so much more to help people know and take their next best step in following Jesus. We not only want to introduce people to the transforming power of Christ, but we want to see their lives changed because of it. God has moved in our church and in our community, and we will see him do it again. We've been part of this together, so let us together take our next step in following Jesus in this place we call home. Let's be for Nona.
Would you welcome to the stage my lovely wife, really the hero, the backbone, I think, of our church in so many ways, my wife, Stacey. Would you welcome her?
Thank you.
So Stacey and I are going to jump in, and we're going to talk about what happened in 2018, and we're looking forward to it. So why don't you take us away, babe?
Awesome. So I don't know about you guys, but I am a real visual learner. And so you saw in that video mentioned that we have grown by about 45%. So we're going to do a little visual display of this. So can you guys work with me here? So if you are from like Megan back to David back there, so he's back there, wave David. Okay, and then we're going to go all the way over here. If you're in that section, will you stand up right now, just real quick? Okay, so this represents the number of people that 1 year ago were not here in 2 services. Do you see that? How crazy that is? Okay, thank you guys. Sit down. So our church has grown in attendance by 45% across 2 services, and that's incredible. As we've seen with this Be Rich over the past couple of weeks, in addition to our global giving that we do, we've given over $70,000 away this year.
Yeah. Another thing that's happened is, as the video mentions, that we've tripled community groups. And because of Formation Group and different opportunities like that, over 200 of you are engaged in life-giving relationships through group. And we're so excited about that reality, what that means for our church as well. Another thing that's happened over the course of the year that I think I sometimes forget, and I think we can sometimes miss, is we doubled our leadership team over the last year. Here's what's crazy. I want to show you a picture of our team. If you look at this picture right here, you'll notice that Jen and Andrew are in the photo. This time last year, Jen and Andrew were splitting their time between 2 locations. They were not fully here, not fully invested in Lake Nona alone, and it's amazing to see what God has done there. Laura, we didn't even know who Laura was, and Laura has now joined our team as a creative arts and worship director. And then there's some other people in the photo you need to know, people like Tinashe and Sharon and Ann and Natalie. These people are all volunteers. They give their time freely. They're at meetings every week. They're planning events. They're a massive part of what we're doing. And in just over a year, we've more than doubled our leadership team. So now that I've shown you a photo of what we're supposed to look like, here's how we actually interact with each other. That's our real life and the way in which things go. For us. And so that's another thing that's just happened in the last year. It's amazing to see what God has done.
In addition to that, we have dreamed together about reaching the students in the Lake Nona community. And so we launched this year Nona Students, which has interacted and engaged over 100 students just over this past fall, and we are celebrating God for that. I read one quote here that I love to see. This is from a student that's been attending Nona Church for less than a year, and she said, Nona Students has given me a community that has been an outlet to experience all the triumphs and trials I come across. I'm thankful to have people to do life with who have been an answer to my prayers.
How many of us would say that that's a pretty good run for a year? Anybody thankful to God for that? What an incredible deal. Now, here's the thing. All of those things were things that we prayed about and talked about as a church a year ago. And it's amazing to see how those things have come to fruition. But today is For Nona Sunday. And For Nona initiative is about people who give above and beyond their general giving to help us create opportunities and take advantage of opportunities that come our way to establish a presence in our community. And so while all of these things are really cool and we're really excited about them, I want to talk to you, and Stacey and I are going to together, 3 things that happened in 2018. And these things are massive. 3 things that happened in 2018 that, hear this, would not have happened if not for your generosity through For Nona. It is because of your investment in the For Nona initiative. It is because of your passion to put roots in this city and make a difference in our community, to be for Nona, that these things happen. These are things, and we'll see here in just a moment, that we were hoping for but could not prepare for, and really, if we're honest, couldn't even plan for. But because of your generosity and because of our willingness to go all in together above and beyond what we give generally, these things happen. And as you look at these, imagine what church would have been like had these things not have happened in 2018. The first one is this. Because of For Nona, we closed on our Narcoossee property. Are we thankful for that? Is that not an awesome thing? Not only did we close on 5.5 acres on Narcoossee, but we closed that, I think, in April. But from April to December, we have paid off over 1/3 of the property already. In 8 months, we've already paid off 1/3 of that property. So we're thanking God for that.
And so for those of you that don't know, normally on a Sunday, I work in Kid City. I get to hang out with your children in elementary school. And this time last year, we were sweating a bit because we were at capacity in nearly every single classroom we had from birth through 5th grade. And we had begun praying and seeing, how on earth are we going to fit these children? We were at a point where we were going to need to close our classrooms during certain services for safety reasons. And because of For Nona and your generosity, we were able to double our ministry capacity here at North Lake Park Elementary. And because of that, our ability to minister to children in that birth to 5th grade has doubled as well.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit to that because it's amazing to me how God provides at just the right time. I was listening to a message I gave in November, and I said, hey, we're about 14 families away from having to close out our kids' spaces in the event that happens. That was November of 2017. We'll roll around to spring of 2018, and we have more than blown through that number. And right when it looked like we were about to have to close classrooms down, North Lake Park Community School, which is the opposite side of this building, which is not what was originally part of our deal, came to us and said, we want to give you the entire facility. And so at just the right time, right before we were going to have to turn families away, God doubled our space and allowed us to meet more kids, which I think is so powerful, and it's, I think, indicative in what a parent said just 4 weeks ago.
Yes, I wanted to share that with you, and she said, my 7-year-old started talking about Jesus' love for her and how she loves him for it. Thank you. And that's from a Nona Church parent that's been here for less than 4 weeks. And guys, we wouldn't have had space for her unless we had been able to double that capacity because of the generosity of our church body.
The next thing that we want to talk about is the fact that we launched Nona Nights. And so part of the reason why there's a little bit more room in our services over the fall has been because we have opened up a 3rd service at another location. And if you were with us last year, one of the things we were passionate about was opening another location because of our space issues and because of our capacity issues. And last year we didn't know that this would be the location or this would be the place, but we launched Nona Nights 10 weeks ago, and we have engaged over 50 new people that have otherwise not been a part of Nona Church in the last 10 weeks. Is that not an incredible thing? We're excited about what God is doing. I love this photo right here because I think it's indicative of new people that are coming and getting engaged. And then we took these surveys a couple of weeks ago, and it was so funny because we had our Nona Night survey ask questions like this. How long have you been attending Nona Nights? More than 4 weeks or less than 4 weeks? I mean, that's how small of a sample size we have. And this came from a Nona Nights attender who had been attending less than 4 weeks. Listen to these words and realize that this is a soul. These are people whose lives are being changed because of your generosity. Said, my boyfriend and I have tried 10 or so churches, and this is the first one that God has confirmed again and again in both of us separately. It feels so calm and welcoming here. I think it's so incredible to see what God has done in just such a short period of time. But here's the reality. All of these expansion initiatives could not have happened without your generosity through Fornona. Because the vision and the goal and the hope of Fornona Resources is to help us expand into our community, to launch new services, to launch new locations, to be able to create capacity and space to be able to go after what God has called us to. Fornona Initiative is not just about a building. It is not just about getting a brick and mortar facility. It's so much more than that. It is about taking every opportunity that God sends our way and making sure that we are a multiplying church, making as much impact as possible in our community. And so because of your generosity, we want to say thank you. Thank you. Because if not for you, if not for the way that you have been Fornona, none of these things could have happened. To add to that, just so you know, all of these expansion initiatives that we just talked about, so the double of space, that's increased rent. The added location at Nona Nights, that's increased rent as well. All of the things that it takes to be able to run this on a weekly basis that Fornona funds allowed us to launch, all of these expansion initiatives are included in our operating budget for 2019, meaning that we have found a sustainable way to not just use these resources to help catalyze us as a church, but to build it into our normal structure and infrastructure to make sure that these rhythms are sustainable, healthy, and long-lasting. But there's more. Are you guys ready for more? Is that okay?
But wait.
Here we go. Just so you know, with all of that done, we have close to $300,000 still remaining to leverage for future ministry expansion and an extra reserve fund. Is that not something we're thanking God for? So here's the question. What's next, Stace?
Okay, so I told you guys I work in Kid City, and your applause is okay. Okay, but in Kid City, we do something almost every Sunday, and I ask them, are you excited to be here? And they go, oh, and I said, guys, come on, let's make sure the adults can hear us. And then they, I'm sure you hear like a beep out there because they're losing their minds. We're going to do the reverse, okay? Because I usually tell them, let's let the parents hear us, but we're going to change it up. And guys, we want to take a moment and celebrate. I'm going to count to 3. When I say 3, I just want you guys to let it loose. Let's celebrate all that God has done in our community, and let's let the kids hear us over in Kid City, okay? Are you with me? Give me a head nod. Yeah? Okay. All right. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah! Awesome. Well, Stace, why don't you go ahead and pray for us?
I would love to. Please bow your heads. Jesus, Lord, I thank you for this church. Lord, I thank you for what you are doing, what you have done, Lord, and we give you all the glory. Lord, I thank you that you have worked in each of our homes and our hearts, Lord, and that collectively as a church body, we get to see the fruit of what you're doing in each of us, Lord. And Father, I pray that as we have just taken time to look back on the things that you've done, Lord, that we would look at it with a grateful heart, Lord, that we would acknowledge your hand in all of it. And as we begin to look forward, Lord, I pray that you would instill within each of us a vision, a unity that moves us forward in the plan and the hope that you have for Lake Nona. And so I thank you for this church, Lord. I thank you for the people that make it up. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Can we give it one more time for my lovely wife, Miss Stacy Marie Outerbridge? So let's turn our eyes together to what's next. I want to bring us back to that same text, Jeremiah chapter 29. And we're going to look at verse 5 because I really feel like this is the season that God has us in. And it's amazing how one text could have so much to say to us over the course of such a long period of time. This is what God tells the people who are gathering together in a new city to do. He says this: build homes and plan to stay, plant gardens and eat the food they produce. So here's what I believe is next for us. I believe what's next is it's time for us to build and plant. Build and plant. And here's what I mean by that. We are entering a season where we will build the capacity and plant the roots that will allow us to be a generational, multiplying church for the renewal of our city and the world. That it is easy to have a quick start, but how well you finish is far more important. And the church that we're trying to start, the church that we're trying to be a part of, the church that we hope God would allow us to be involved in here in Lake Nona is the kind of church that our kids' are a part of. A church that sends our kids' out into their world, into their cities, into their communities, into every nook, cranny, and crevice of the world, bringing the good news of Jesus. And that while we're excited about what God has done in the past, we are looking forward with anticipation about what he might do in the future. And I use that word build and plant because I believe that these are really the two components that are necessary. But there's something about building capacity that's essential. We've got to build an infrastructure around us to handle the growth that we currently have. And we need to plan and prepare for what it means to be able to be something that is not moved to and fro, but really established in our community. And while we talk about plans over the next few moments, I want to remind you of two pieces of scripture that have been really helpful for me as we think about planning as a church. One is found in Proverbs 16:9. It says this: the heart of man plans his way, but would you say this with me, the Lord, on the count of three? 1, 2, 3. But the Lord establishes his steps. I mean, we've got plans, but at the end of the day, this is God's church, and he's going to do what he wants to do. And if I'm honest, if we were to look back at all that's happened over the last year or so, it's not because we were brilliant, negotiated, and figured it all out. It's because God had a plan, and we're simply walking in it. Proverbs 16:31 says this: commit your works to the, 1, 2, 3, the Lord, and your plans will be established. That more than saying this is what we're going to do with closed fists and with a specific heart to say this my way or the highway, we want to be open-handed people constantly asking God, where are you moving? What are you doing? And how can we be a part of the story that you are writing? The question we've been asking as a team is not so much what do we want to do next, but this: what does God want to do next? What is it that God wants to do here in the heart of our church? Jeremiah 29, in that same text that we've been studying, we find this: for I know the plans I have for you. Now, if you've been a follower of Jesus for any period of time, you've probably heard this verse, over and over and over again, and they're talking about your future and what college you're going to go to and who you're going to marry and all that kind of stuff, and it's probably taken out of context. But what I want to focus in on today are the two words that are highlighted: I know. Only God knows. Only God knows the plans that he has for our church. Only God knows the plans that he has for your specific life. And our responsibility is to come in humility and say, God, we don't know everything, but we want to be in step with what we sense you doing, and we want to be faithful to do those things. And we leave the results up to you. So here's what we sense God calling us to do as we build and plant, The first one is this: we feel that God's calling us into a season of updating all of our North Lake Park environments, creating environments here in the auditorium, creating environments in our kids' city spaces, creating environments in our lobby where everyone who comes to our church feels warmly welcomed and invited. And we also want to be people that plan and prepare in advance, not to be people who are simply responding all the time. And so we know that we've been in this facility now for just over 4 years, and we're a mobile church where all of this stuff gets packed up into a 16-foot box truck. Every single day gets driven over and sits in the heat, and then gets driven back over here and unpacked again for us to be able to gather every Sunday. And it would be unwise for us to not budget in advance and think in advance about the fact that our sound system and things like that are going to go through some wear and tear. We want to be prepared to make those investments. And we want to be ahead of the game instead of behind the game as it pertains to making sure we create a great environment for people to know and take their next best step and following Jesus here. The second one is this, in terms of building capacities. We want to establish a residency and an internship. God willing, over the next 2 years or so, we will have more than just this location in Nona Nights, but we'll have a brick and mortar permanent hub as well, and God willing, even more locations in our community. Well, where are those people coming from that are going to lead these communities and lead these churches and make a big difference and plant flags in our city and hopefully plant flags across the world for the cause of Jesus? Well, we don't want to be a church that simply goes and takes other people's talent and bring them here. We want to raise up our own talent. We want to be invested in young leaders and people that are called and passionate about vocational ministry. And we believe a way to do that is to give people hands-on experience as they discern their call into ministry. We want to, over the course of 2019, launch a residency and an internship that allows high-talent, high-called people to come to our church to learn and be the future leaders and pastors and directors of our ministry. And our ability to allocate resources to For Nona will allow us to do that over the course of the next year. Another thing we want to do is we want to strengthen our leadership teams. I want you to just raise your hand really quick if you can. If you serve or volunteer in any environment, either on Sundays or during the course of the week, would you go ahead and just raise your hand really quick? Raise your hand. Okay. Can we put our hands together and thank God for all of these people? What an incredible thing. Okay. Here's what we know. Here's what we know. In order for us to do what God has called us to do, we need all of our leaders to grow and to be developed and be invested in, and we need new leaders to step into the story as well. That really what happens is when all of us find our fit and make our contribution, that's when the game changes. Our church is not built on the talent of a few. It is built on the contributions of many. And so we want to invest a ton of resources into you volunteers. If you're currently volunteering, we want to invest a ton of resources into you over the course of the next year to help you grow and develop in your walk with God and to get better at what you do and invest in new leaders as well so that we can make a difference in our city. And the last thing that we sense in the coming year or so is that we really want to be intentional about developing the Narcoossee property. How many of us think it would be really great to have a permanent hub in our city? Anybody really thinking that's the next step for us? Yeah. Here's the deal. Here's why we think this is such a big deal, okay? There are 100,000 people that are moving into Lake Nona by 2020. And there are only 2 brick and mortar churches within the community to meet the need of those people. We're not building a church because we feel like it's just the next cool thing to do. We want to build a permanent ministry hub here in our community because we see a wave of people coming, and there is not enough capacity or buildings or facilities to be able to have 24/7 presence in the community. And as one of the largest churches, if not the largest church in Lake Nona right now, we feel like it is our stewardship responsibility to plant roots and make a difference in the city, not just for now, but for years and years and years to come. Because how many of you know all of that land on Narcoossee Road is going to be developed one day, and it's going to be really, really expensive, and it's going to be really, really hard to afford? Anybody noticing that, right? Yeah. So we want to do it now while it's affordable so that we can get ahead of the game and have roots in a community that desperately need to know the good news of Jesus. And so with us today is somebody who I have known almost for a decade, who I've done a couple building projects with, and he's the man who's leading our building project here as we get ready to launch a permanent ministry hub. So I'm going to ask you to stand up real quick. And can you guys just welcome Dave Eddy in the house? Dave is an incredible guy. So Dave, you can have a seat. Dave is an incredible guy. He has built churches across the city of Orlando. He's a frugal man. He's a man who loves Jesus. He's a part of Vista Church, the church that planted and sent us years ago. And he is passionate about getting this project done. In fact, we joke with Dave, he's not allowed to retire until he's done building out our projects and the things that we've got for him to do. And he keeps on telling us, well, then you better hurry up. And so that's what we're going to try and do over the next couple of years or so. And so what we've been doing as we've been going through this process is we've been asking God, what does it look like to develop the Narcoossee property? What does it look like for us to be able to build not a monument to ourselves, but a permanent ministry hub that is a blessing to our community, that is leveraged to make a difference in our city, and at the same time happens to be a place where Christians gather to worship Jesus, and everyone can come and know and take their next best step in following Jesus. And so Dave and a small leadership team, some builders and some people who are good at aesthetic have been talking about how do we design this space, how do we make this work with our budget and our reality as well. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what we see happening in the next couple of months, God willing, and we'll talk about that. So here's the first thing. You guys want some details on the property and kind of what we're thinking to do? All right, so here's a couple of things that we're thinking about. The first one is this. We believe that we have got a 2-phase property development, and the first phase will be a 17,000 plus square foot facility. That 17,000 square foot facility will include a 450 seat auditorium that will also be used as a multi-purpose space. It will have a full service kitchen. And here's one of the things I love about it. We'll also have a 6,000 square feet worth of community space, 4,000 under air, and about 2,000 square feet of patio space. And we're really excited about that because of this last piece. We've also developed it and made plans to develop it where there's a class space for a preschool as well. And so imagine this, if you could, for a moment. A family or a mom or a family that's in the community drops their kid off to a preschool because God knows preschool is expensive here in Lake Nona, and the waiting list is forever long, right? But they're able to drop them off, their kids off to a faith-based preschool, drop their kid off, walk into a 4,000 square foot lobby that is warm and welcoming, where there's a little coffee shop that's selling coffee, nonprofit helping serve missionaries around the world and fund them. A mom could pick up her coffee, walk to a coffee table and open up her Bible and have a small group Bible study right there on on Monday morning or Tuesday morning or Wednesday or whatever day of the week. Imagine a men's group being able to come into that space and be able to have a barbecue out on the property, because there's tons of trees and beautiful land that we're going to develop and make sure it feels not just kind of, want it to feel really like it's a home and like a really comfortable place to be. Imagine a place where kids can come during the week, and we've got a small, because our auditorium is built to be a half-court basketball court, they can play indoor soccer or play hoops and be able to be a part of a program like Upward Basketball or whatever that might be. Imagine a place where moms of preschoolers can meet, because in 4,000 square feet, we're not making any promises yet, but there might be potential that we could even pull off an indoor playground, all right? Don't hold me to that, but there's things that might be able to happen. Imagine that kind of space, a community hub, a place where it doesn't matter where you've been, what you've done, or where you're going, but what matters is you can come to a place to find hope and find love and find a welcoming atmosphere. A place where office suites are going to allow our team to gather and have our own space to be able to not just lead that location, but be able to use it as a launching pad for training facilities, to be able to plant new churches and new communities across the city. This is the hope. And just so you know that we're not making this up and it's just not words on a screen, I want to show you just a quick rendering of how that 5.5 acre property is looking right now, what we're planning to do. And then I'll show you a second photo. You can go to that one, which shows us the makeup of the environment right now as we're planning for it to be. And of course, these things are still in process. But there's a lot of things that are going on in the life of our church. There are a lot of things to look forward to. And at the end of the day, it will happen because of your generosity. It will happen because of our collective effort to be for Nona, which begs this question: what is our part to play? And to help us with that, would you put your hands together for our president of our elder team, Mr. Eric Butz. Hey, Eric, you look good.
Thanks, Colin. Nice shirt.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I like yours too.
All right. Hey, we are excited. Isn't it fun to hear not just what God's done, but what we're trusting Him for in the future? And thanks for painting some of those pictures for us. So let's talk a little bit about our part to play in this. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways that could look, but we want to mention two specific areas. And one of those areas is through our financial giving, and Colin's been talking about that as we've gone. But of course, turning these visions into reality takes a lot of time and effort and money. And so the For Nona campaign and initiative that we did a year ago has been a big part of that. But as we look at making these visions a reality, one thing that we know that's just a matter of fact is that the pace of our vision will move at the speed of God's provision. The pace of our vision and fulfilling that vision will move at the speed of God's provision. And the cool thing is that God has been providing in some really significant ways, and that's through your generosity. And we've been moving along at a good clip. And at the same time, we want to continue to see that accelerate. The fruitfulness we've been seeing, we want to see accelerate and all the more. So I want to talk with two different groups here as we think about our giving and generosity. And the first group is those of you that were here a year ago. So as we saw, they're this side of the room. Of course, it's not actually this side. But those of you that were here a year ago and made pledges to For Nona, I want to encourage you to check in and see, am I at least up to date on that? And might I even accelerate that pledge that I've made? If you've forgotten what that pledge that you made is, just email the church and we can remind you. And maybe you're in a position that God's blessed you more and you might consider accelerating your giving, because as we do that, it gives us more flexibility to seize opportunities. Even though Colin mentioned that $300,000 we have in reserve, we're actually looking at using that and trusting the Lord for additional provision to pay off the land entirely, and that will allow us to leverage construction loan and have some flexibility to do additional things to see the expansion of the church. So for those of you that made those pledges, check in on that. And remember, a year ago, I had to stand up here and dance in cat pajamas. And so, let's not waste that, all right? Remember those pledges. And thank you for those of you that are fulfilling those faithfully. All right, second group of people is if you're not part of the fun yet, how do you get in on this? Well, because so many of us have come in the last year and weren't a part of that, we do want to give the opportunity for you to be in on the fun, be in on the joy of giving to this. And so we're asking people to consider making a pledge, a 2-year pledge now at this point. There were people who gave generously of their time and money to prepare this community, this space, and all the aspects of our church for the 299 people that filled out, new people that filled out Connect cards in the last year. Those people gave with you in mind. And so now it's a chance for you to think about how might the Lord be calling me to be generous to help the next 299 people come in and be a part of what God's doing here. So we'd ask you to pray and ask the Lord, what does stewardship look like for me? How might I be a part of this by participating financially? You're probably sitting here because God has changed your life somehow through being a part of this community. And we give to see more lives change, to see our own growth in Christ and to see more lives change. And so you're giving to life change and you're giving to the Lord and to honor him. So pray about that and thank you for your prayerful consideration of what your gift and your pledge might be. And specifically in your bulletin, there's these little Fornona cards. Fill this out at some point in the next couple weeks. Drop it in the box in the back in whatever way that the Lord might lead you to be a part of this financially. One more specific thing, and this is for everyone. We do want everyone to come before the Lord and ask, how might I participate in this financially? And another aspect that's for everyone is coming in January, we have our Nona One Leadership Conference, and this is an opportunity for anyone who's currently or would like to serve in the church to get together. It's a Friday evening and all day Saturday. It's Friday night, we're going to have a great dinner together. There's childcare provided the whole time. We're going to celebrate what God's doing, have some time to get to know each other, and then on Saturday will be a full day of equipping to learn about different opportunities in the church, be trained in specific opportunities, and equip our hands to serve the Lord and to serve our community. So mark that on your calendars. If you need to move some work things around to be there, do that. It's going to be a great time, and so register for that today. So those are a couple specific ways you can be involved. And again, we're so grateful, and it's fun to be a part of this community and grateful for all the investment that each of you make in that. So encourage you to be a part of it.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. As we wrap up our time today, I've been processing this question, and I want to kind of leave this question with you as well. It's this. What if our choice to be for Nona will be the answer to someone else's prayer? Like, what if there are, some single parents out there right now that are looking for a place to connect and they don't know where to go, and over the course of the next year, somebody like you is going to invite them to Nona, and they're going to find a place where their kid loves coming to Kid City so much because the environment is so compelling and because the leaders are so well trained and so invested in the lives of their kids that they don't even want to go to church, but they keep on coming back because of the way that their kid is engaged. And then all of a sudden, they hear this message about a God who loves them, despite their past, despite the brokenness that might exist there, despite the things that happen, and they enter into a new relationship. Think about the teenagers right now, and we know the situation about kids in our community as it is, right now, who are looking for a place to belong, and they're trying so hard to fit in that they're willing to compromise their values and their morals and everything that they grew up believing because they need to find a friend group. And over the course of the next year, because of the work that we do and because of your generosity, they find home, and they find friends, and they find relationships here. Imagine, if you could with me, the person who is looking for a place to go to church but can't go on a Sunday morning and shows up to Nona Nights because we offer a Sunday night gathering because of your generosity and faithfulness to serve, and they meet Jesus. Or imagine an international student who ends up coming to church because somebody invites them, and they hear the good news of Jesus in an environment that isn't overwhelming but accessible and honest and real and authentic because of what you have done. And what if those stories are the stories that we get to tell year after year after year? And what if those are the stories that our kids get to see, that our kids' kids get to see? Here's what I know. Because of your generosity, those stories have happened this year. I want to show you a picture. This is the last 2 months for us as a church. And I'm blown away by these photos. See Ashley getting baptized by her dad because of her experience in Kid City. You see Sina, an Iranian who is a student studying here in the States, who was invited by a friend to come to church and said he'd been waiting for 3 years for someone to invite him to church. He got invited to church, and he heard about Jesus in the I Am Who You Say I Am series. And he walked away from his Muslim faith and became a follower of Jesus, and we baptized him in that pool back there. Or John and Lisa, who did not live in Orlando a year ago and came to our church over the course of the spring and now are serving at Nona Nights and have made decisions to take their next best step in baptism. Or Alex, who came to Nona Nights. It's only been around for 10 weeks. And in that environment, because of community, because of friendship, made his decision to follow Jesus as well. And when I see these pictures, and when I see these people, I just think about, what if this is just the drop in a vast ocean of what God wants to do through us? What if this is just the beginning of something incredible? What if this is just the rumblings and the murmurs of a move of God in our community and in our city that we will tell our kids about? That's the church I want to be a part of. And I think it's the church that you want to be a part of too. And it happens when we together sacrifice as others have sacrificed for us, as we make a difference for those who have not here yet, but whose lives are going to be changed as a result. So Nona Church, we've seen God move. Let's see him do it again. Let's be for Nona. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father,